Are you into some fun action RPG combat? Where the protagonists will be put into some interesting interactions?
Why are you in here?
Then being called Tentacle Boy as a form of flirting?
Tentacle boy.
And then later, being able to date potential waifus or a husbando?
I wonder how you got it out of me. Oh yeah, you're so cool, Tentacle Boy.
And experiencing a Persona-like game? Then you may enjoy Eternights. Created by indie company Studio Sai and its founder, Hyun, this Persona-inspired game was created in just under 3 years. The story behind the game's concept is quite inspiring in its own right. Hyun enjoyed the game Catherine Full Body back in 2019, and then a friend told him to play Persona 5. He enjoyed Persona 5 so much that he dived deeper and played Persona 4 Golden and Persona 3 soon after. From his experience, the idea of Eternights was first born. The game's initial idea as a Persona-like game was first pitched on the visual novel subreddit back in early 2020. After getting the green light from an investor, Hyun took a big chance, quit his full-time career at Apple to work on Eternights in June 2020. Fast forward to 2022, and the game is starting to become a reality. The game's trailer was shown at various game shows that year, such as the 2022 Game Awards and the PlayStation State of Play events. 2023 would build on to this initial hype as a potential sleeper RPG, where its trailer greeted viewers with the dating aspect of the game with the various ladies, then suddenly showed the main protagonist's arm being sliced off, turning the mood of the game from just a simple dating sim to being quite serious right away. The demo would be released soon after, an hour-long build that showed players what to expect from the full game. Throughout this video, you'll be hearing a lot of references to Persona, as the game is clearly a love letter to the popular Atlas JRPG, and by explaining this game, Eternights, using Persona terms, it makes this game a lot easier to understand. So with that being said, let's get into what Eternights is all about. The game starts off with the main protagonist hanging out with his best friend, Chani, at his apartment. As with Persona, in Eternights, you get to name the protagonist, who I named Akira Kurusu, the protagonist's name in the Persona 5 manga, even though the name Ren Amamiya is considered the canon name. Oh, did I mention that the protag is also silent? Well, this is another Persona influence that its fans will feel right at home. So after naming our main character Akira, we let Chani talk us in to signing up on dating apps. He asks us some questions about what to put on our dating profile, tells us about his dating profile strategies, and then we catch a TV ad about a pop star named Yuna. Afterwards, Chani goes home, we pass out for the night, and we have a strange dream. The next day, we wake up to see the world is heading towards a post-apocalyptic world, and we're told by the government to head to the shelters. We meet up with Chani at the shelters beneath the subway, lock ourselves in with some essentials that Chani brought, and try to wait out the apocalypse. Yet 3 days later, the shelter door suddenly opens to a surprised Chani and main protag, with some noises heard just beyond the shelter door. With no help coming, our main protag and Chani have no choice but to open the door and enter the dark subway tunnels, setting up the story of Eternights. Now if you played the demo, you're already familiar with the beginning of this game, as I talked about the first 25 to 30 minutes of the demo. Rather than take place at a high school, it takes place after an apocalypse, with nearly everyone mutated into monsters. Because of the setting, the game has a darker tone, is seen from the game's sections, or in Persona terms, palaces, and the game's overarching story. As for the characters in the game, they're all likable and have their own unique charm. Each of them have their own backstories, and it was great learning more about their struggles. Eternights benefits from a tight small cast, so you get to know each character a lot better, with them having more room to grow throughout the story, as well as having a big impact on the overall story. The game also has a Korean influenced theme and setting to it, which I immensely enjoyed, since it's a new take on the genre, as most dating sim RPGs come from Japanese settings. Players will notice these Korean themes from the Hangul seen on the signs, the police monsters Hangul on their uniforms, and some of the main characters having Korean names. It's these unique themes, a post-apocalyptic world, an ARPG dating sim draped in a Korean setting, that got many JRPGers excited in playing this game. Looking past the story, the game oozes with Persona influence. Eternights has the calendar system alongside the current day and time, with this game having afternoon and night. The aesthetics of the game also undergone changes within just a year, from this state of the play in 2022, taking a look at the upper right, until now, with its current form. During the dialogue sections, our silent protag will be given a choice of options, where picking one option will get a response back, and in many cases, a small stat increase. In fact, this game gives out stat increases quite often, making social stats easier to level up. And you're probably wondering, oh, there's social stats in this game? Yeah, pretty much like Persona. Anime and JRPG tropes are also strong within Eternights, with a lot of perverted talk, such as this text message here, or just talking to Chani in general.
Dude, we stole a lot of porn from my grandpa. You need to be more specific. That was a classic. You threw that away, right? Dude, I didn't know you were that into it.
Guys?
As he pretty much likes to talk about girls, or the protag finding himself in some interesting positions. The game also has their own palaces in Persona 5 talk, or sections, where the group will fight a whole bunch of monsters and there'll be a boss at the end. And these sections have to be completed by a certain date to progress the story. Players will have to balance their time between these sections and hanging out with your companions, where the group's home base will be on a train, since much of the city has been overrun with monsters, which gives players that all too familiar Persona dilemma. Do you fight or date on a given day? In the Persona games, a popular strategy is to finish each section in one day, then spend the rest of the time doing side activities with your teammates and waiting until the section's finish date. Yet unlike Persona 5 Royal, where it can be overwhelming how to spend your time on any given day, since there's so much to do, Eternights has a much smaller scope, and thus makes doing side activities a lot more manageable, as there's a lot less social links and only a few activities available, such as dating the various ladies or guy, scavenging for supplies at stores, which are used to make your character stronger, playing mini games, which also gets various material to, yes, make your character stronger, or improving your social stats, like courage or affection, so you can open up the final social links with your dates. Moving on to the combat, it's quite fun. The battles is just a protag fighting solo, but with his allies able to do support, such as cast magic. The game will punish you for mindlessly mashing the attack button and doing nothing else, as your best friend in this game will actually be the dodge button. You'll be rolling and dodging a ton in this game, as the game encourages of playing smart and using that dodge button. This is especially true if you played a game on expert mode, as I did, as enemies do so much damage on this level. But you know, I like the challenge on expert, as it felt exhilarating after beating a tough boss or surviving the hordes of enemies thrown at our main protag. By perfectly dodging an attack, the protag will gain some speed, a small window of invulnerability where you can wail on enemies, and it will refill the protag's skill meter, which are used to do special attacks. Speaking of special attacks, as a protag levels up his social links with his friends, he'll learn new moves. There's also elemental attacks, which are powerful attacks used on bosses. And the reason is that bosses in this game have shields, which means they take no damage until their shields are broken. By using elemental attacks, you can crack these shields and eventually deal damage to these bosses. While your allies won't actively participate in battle, they'll have their own MP to cast magic, such as healing, giving shields, or doing ice attacks. The game's combat is quite simple, yet it does have some good depth to it, as it reminded me of the more old school action RPGs, where you'll get punished if you miss on too many dodges, or if you don't take advantage of enemy openings. In between fighting monsters, you'll have to solve puzzles. I did like this element in the game, as the puzzles weren't too difficult and added a unique design to each game's palace or section. From making out all tiles to one color, to playing a dance game similar to DDR, to rearranging pictures, you'll see your fair share of puzzles throughout Eternights. I liked how these puzzles didn't hold the player's hands and make it easier, Nor did puzzles didn't require you to backtrack or to go to another room to get an item to solve said puzzle. Everything you need to solve that puzzle is right in front of you. Now, with all that being said and how puzzles didn't hold your hand, I do think there should be an option if players do get stuck to ask for a hint or even the solution. And this option would be if players just wanted to play the game for the story or to just hate puzzles in their RPGs. Now to get into the game's main selling point, dating. And there's plenty of dating, as the dateable character's social links go all the way up to level 7. Each dateable character has their own backstory and challenges to deal with, and as the protag, it's up to you to hear them out and encourage them. Unlike Persona, where it takes an average of 2 to 3 times to level up a social link, in this game, leveling up these links go much faster, as each date will increase their link to the next level. As with pretty much all other dating sims, you can get intimate with your partner if you choose to date them and level them up all the way. But be careful of being a playa and dating multiple partners, as this game does punish you for doing that. So if you stay faithful to one person, you do get a special scene after you beat the game and after the ending credits. The voice acting in this game is quite good, as there's a lot of notable voice actors from anime and JRPGs you may have watched or played before. And there's actually 2 voice actors from Persona 5 in this game, Elizabeth Maxwell and Zante He. The rest of the cast, such as Aika Intong, Alex La, Alejandro Saab, Kira Buckland, and Brianna Knickerbocker, are all solid as well. The voice acting is one of the game's biggest strengths, and I did notice that the game is almost entirely voice acted, even the social links and bonding moments. As for the music, it's comprised of more dark tones, with a bit more mellow music while on the train or doing social links. There wasn't much of a variety of songs in this game, with the only song standing out to me being the ending song. Now the game is quite short, as I beat it in just under 19 hours. And a few of the hours were spent on extra social links or fighting certain bosses for over an hour. I'm telling you, expert is quite hard. So the game could reasonably be beaten in about 14 to 16 hours. But I wouldn't let Eternights' short length deter players on the fence of trying out this game, especially if you're a fan of Persona. The game was created from one full-time programmer, Hyun, and a host of contractors, as he was developing his first commercial game, so it's unrealistic for this game to be 50 plus hours, with the short time it took to develop this game, plus him being pretty much a one-man army. So since I came to this game knowing all of that, I wasn't expecting the playtime to be a long one, or to have this grand world that you could do so many things in. So with that said, I was pretty cool of just having a few side activities for me to do. And a silver lining to the game's short length is that it had little fluff and no side quests, so the vast majority of playtime will be impactful. Either you're playing the story or you're doing social links. The best part of having a shorter game is that the devs will usually price this game a bit lower. And in this case, the game's priced at only $29.99, which is not a bad price for what you're getting here. While I did enjoy Eternights a lot, I do have some constructive criticism. There's a lot of simple features that this game didn't have that's found in pretty much every modern JRPG, such as not having a no skip function, where other than boss transformation cutscenes where you can't skip past dialogue or story scenes. There's no auto text advance function, some tutorials are barely explained or not at all, such as your group having an MP meter, which doesn't get recharged until after you leave the palace or section. They didn't mention at all how to get this recharged, and I had to rely on Persona knowledge that you actually had to go back to your home base to get your MP recharge. There's no other way to recharge it. And I had to rely on that same Persona knowledge to fill in the gaps for other mechanics in Eternights. And as much as I'm a fan of the Persona series, players shouldn't be expected to know that to play Eternights. Some may also point out to the graphics just being meh, even for an indie game. Personally, I didn't mind the okay-ish graphics, as they're not that bad and it doesn't distract from the overall gameplay. The story's final 25% does fall off a lot, where I had a lot of questions about plot holes, character motivations, and why certain things were happening, and I felt some of those reasons were lacking or weak. Since this would be spoilers to go deeper into this criticism, I'll leave it at that. Overall, I do think that the game lacked polish in its user interface and tutorial section. Despite my criticisms of the game, I thoroughly enjoyed Eternights. It's a new, refreshing take on the Persona dating sim genre, and it adds its own unique spin to stand out. Jaehyun's gamble to leave his full-time career to develop games is finally paying off. So now, the question is, what's next for Studio Sai? they're already working on their second title, as the company now hired full-time staff. I'm excited to see how Studio Sai can build off Eternights and how their second title will turn out in the future.